Shannon? Are you, okay. You were right, it did take 45 seconds. It's like my cell phone. Before we even go, I'm just gonna thank Grassroots TV for being here like they always are and recording live and also having it available so people can watch it later at grassrootstv.org. Our videographer this evening is Shannon Buckner, and she appears to have an apprentice. Who is your apprentice? Zach. Welcome, Zach. Yeah. We are not going to have the mayor's coffee tomorrow at 8 o'clock because this is just too close together from last week, but we will start again next month on the second and fourth Tuesdays. So I think before we start too, let's see, who looks like they're in the mood?
I'll read it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, geez, I didn't call it to order yet, because this is above that.
Okay.
If you want it, when the meeting starts, move it.
Basalt is an. Whoa! Hey!
Wow.
Hey now. Sorry about that. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
Thank you, Councilor Slack.
Go Longhorns.
The loud one. Okay, let's call this meeting to order at 6:01. Could we get a roll call, please, Pam?
Absolutely, thank you.
There we go. Here. Sorry, I wasn't here.
It's all the cake. Gary just blew out his chair. Here.
Here.
Present.
Here.
Here. Thank you. Okay, we are going to just move the gratitude part of this meeting to the very beginning and just say happy birthday to Ryan Mahoney, our town manager, and just express our gratitude for the work he's done in the last, how long?
Almost 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Oh my God, he must be quite old by now. Anyway, it's truly appreciated. I hear it from the community all the time. I hear it from people inside here all the time. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Yes, sir.
And because of that, we value you and want you to stay in the community and maintain a strong marriage. And so we as a group, and if you don't know this, we did. So we purchased for you a dinner gift certificate to one of the fine Basalt restaurants.
Oh,
Woo! Woo!
that's nice. Thank you very much.
Good job, Auden.
Cool. That's the best way of getting people to participate.
Yeah, I did ask a few people, but not you, or you.
Still, that's
Maybe
what,
I'll chip in.
that was a good pick. That was a good pick. Okay, so we have the consent agenda, which is to continue December 10th, public hearing and review of a new arts liquor license for the Basalt Regional Library. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
As said. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is call to the public for items that are not on the agenda. We ask that you limit it to 3 minutes and introduce yourself, say who you are. And lastly, on items not on the agenda, we don't take action, but we listen with all ears. So does anybody have comments now? Yes, Jerry.
These people say, I think you're a wonderful town manager. All my interactions with you have been very good. But I came here to make an observation or a request. I read about the bridge to nowhere, and actually it was the bridge to Homestead Drive. And what I think it would be nice if the town could start planning to finish the sidewalk from along Homestead Drive down to 82. Excuse me. There's going to be a difficult section, I think, but that's in the old town between Spur Lane and Sopris Drive, where It might be difficult to put a sidewalk because of parking, but after that, it's not gonna be so bad. I mean, it might look formidable because of the high bank, but that on the south side, which is where you wanna have a sidewalk to keep the sun on it, that there is enough room, I think, for a small sidewalk, wide enough maybe for a couple to walk down and a parent to push their stroller down. And this would complete the loop. A lot of people walk along there, and not just Homestead drivers, but it's really kind of scary when you come down the hill where the high banks are, because it's a blind curve, and people like to, as you probably notice, put the pedal to the metal no matter where they are, and they make that turn and they come around there, and it's a blind curve if you're walking down there. Anyhow, that's my suggestion. I know you don't have it in the budget for next year, but if planning could start, that would be really great in my opinion.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Good thought. Anybody else have thoughts for items that are not on the agenda? Okay. Mayor and council reports and comments?
I would love to comment on the Basalt Longhorns.
Oh, of course.
Everyone that was at the game on Saturday, it was an amazing turnout by the town. I hope everyone's coming out this Saturday. It was just an awesome game. So cool to see everyone involved and cheering, and it was wild. So hopefully we can pull it off against Delta. Go Longhorns. Chief was there.
Chief, of course the chief was there.
It was awesome.
Anybody?
Yeah, I have two petty things, which is what I traffic in. If you don't mind. One topic, I observed to Ryan, Katie, and Jen at an earlier meeting that it wouldn't hurt us terribly to do a little decorating in the town office over there, which has cinder block walls, which we've decorated with white paint. And so rather than you having to bring this up, Ryan, and waste taxpayer money, a few $100 and some thought, some kids' art, or even finding something to make it nicer in there. It's sort of the broken windows theory of policing, where if things look bad, they get worse. And it would be, you know, it's kind of bleak back there.
Which office are you talking about?
Just back there.
Oh, Ryan's room?
Yeah. So I feel like there's general support. There's general support to buff that out a little bit with modest amounts of money, or do it for free. Just think about it. If I can help, or if anyone can help. Susan? Okay, that's point one, petty item one. Petty item two. I believe the majority of this group, and tell me if you disagree, still supports opening the alley, which was the one campaign promise I made, and I think the bulk of council endorses you spending a little time on that, and again, I'm also available to work on that.
Also, didn't you say earlier to me that you and I would be decorating Ryan's office together?
I don't think I said that.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I may have to go pick up my daughter, but I'll be right back.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I just have one, two, and that is the sidewalk to nowhere, that is to somewhere now. That has been always just a head scratcher of why did we put all that money into that bridge to dump people out on a 50-mile-an-hour road, which isn't supposed to be 50 mile an hour, but I am so happy. I'm trying to visualize that walk. Have you walked it to see how far it is? If you went,
Done the actual, no.
I would like to know how long that, I could check that out myself. But anyway, that is wonderful, and I know it wasn't just you, but somehow all these things are happening while you're sitting in that undecorated office. So it's great. Bleak office. Apparently it makes you work harder.
I concentrate on the work.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not laying down taking a nap on the sofa.
Sofa.
Anybody else?
I have
Okay.
I'd like to give gratitude to our police department and the first responders who on Sunday morning replied to the pickup truck that plowed into the retaining wall.
I wondered what that
was crazy looking. And so thank you so much for everyone who responded to that. And then also, I have a question that follows up with that. Is that town property, or who's retaining wall is that?
CPW.
It's CPW?
Mhm. So we've
Okay.
notified them, they're aware that occurred, so, and in a quick discussion with Chief Knott the other day, the gentleman, had insurance, and so they'll be working with CPW
Okay.
to get a fix,
Is that holding anything up? I mean, like
A dam.
anything like,
ultimately. But I don't think that structurally it altered the dam, but that's for somebody to investigate.
we just say ho-hum, like nothing's gonna happen because of it, which would be great if nothing happened. Anybody else? Going? Boy, these are super loud tonight.
Maybe we won't have any Mike.
Okay, so, Ryan, how about a manager's report? You got anything?
I do. I have a couple things. Susan had requested that I bring to everybody's attention that in the news section of our Town of Basalt webpage, you can link to the Let's
Yeah.
Talk Basalt webpage to fill out the survey. So you as a citizen or interested party could give your opinion on some of the scenarios.
About what?
Dealing with growth and sort of different nodes that have been identified
And different capital projects that
Capital
you
projects, yeah.
prefer. But you have to respond by through Monday the 25th. We're keeping it open. And just to warn everybody who's listening, it's a little clunky and it's a little hard to use, but just bear with it. And you can vote on your preferred alternative for 4 parcels and identify your capital projects you like. But we also only want you to vote once. So if you did vote at the open house on the 13th, we don't want you to vote also online.
And if you have problems with the website, call Susan Philp, and her direct line is?
Just call 927-4701. They'll send you over. They find me.
They do find you.
Jackie, here,
Yes,
really
sir.
quick.
I'm sorry.
The open house was incredible, and it was 100 people or more. Really good civic participation, and staff deserves credit for that, but also it's a good sign for the town that people wanted to play.
That was awesome.
Yes. And the online survey.
Did you have anything else, Ryan?
I do. I have a few
Okay.
more. Also, speaking of surveys, we have been working with Eagle County. They're taking the lead on doing a resiliency plan. And we did add a link to our webpage on that. So they have had input from the other side of the hill over in the Vale Valley, and they would like to hear more from folks over here. So if you could take a moment to fill out that survey, that would be great. And then a couple other just quick follow-ups. So staff has been meeting with our regional partners, I'll call them, on broadband, and that was one of the directives that we put into our 2020 work plan. And so our intent is to come back to council and give you a brief on that, and we'll probably have some kind of regional discussion where we would invite electeds after the new year. But those conversations are going well, and there's a lot of things happening, so it is enlightening to get sort of the pulse of what everybody's up to, because I think that could be advantageous for Basalt at the end of the day. And then the last thing, last week we had somebody come in to ask about the environmental testing up at the range, and so I had indicated then that I had been following up with those folks, and last Wednesday I did actually speak and get an update from the gentleman with CDPHE who is reviewing the testing
And
plan.
CDPHE is?
Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Yes, thank you. And he was reviewing their testing plan, and he said that he had been short-staffed, which was taking time, but he indicated to me that we had 6 projects ahead of ours and he was gonna move that to the front, and review it and get CPW the comments. And that he would copy me when that happened. So I have not received that communication yet. But then also, in closing, I do have a meeting with CPW staff tomorrow. So I'll try to get an update on that, as well as other details of where they are with the upgrades to the gun range, and share a little bit about our, another thing in our strategic work plan, which is to look at Lake Christine and possibly some connector trails up in that area.
Great job on the health department. We don't want to know how you did that, but moved us to the,
I was just really nice.
okay, well,
No, he knew it had been sitting there, and I was just a little bit of a squeaky wheel, and so I think he was,
excellent.
thought it would be good. So, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Okay, next item is Basalt Chamber of Commerce update on economic development partnership, resolution number 10, series of 2014.
Yeah, so
That would be Chris.
Chris is here, and Chris and I have chatted a bit. I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background, and hopefully not stealing her thunder too much here, but Chris and I have been talking at length for pretty much the entire time we've been here, since we both started around the same time, about ways that we can just improve the outreach to local businesses. And so, you know, Chris has really taken the lead on that, and has done a lot of work with the SBDC, Small Business Development Center folks with the state, as well as OEDIT, which is the Office of Economic Development and Trade. Correct?
International trade.
And international trade.
More acronyms.
And has been able to get some grants through them to look at a co-working space, do the rebranding, and she's done a lot of outreach with her constituents, the business community, to figure out what their needs are. And lo and behold, 2 years later, she does have now a space up the street here on Midland. And in addition to rolling out a new space for her offices with the Chamber and Visitor Center, also looking at a small co-working space there, and then really to be a resource center for businesses. And so she and I had been talking, dating back to 2014, the council, the then council, had passed a resolution that offered up matching grant money. If the Chamber were to raise money each year, we would match it at $50,000 over 3 years, and that would be for you know, economic development purposes, basically trying to bolster the community generally. And some of that work was followed through, but there remains $59,000 in that account. We really just tonight wanted to bring you all up to speed. You had authorized, or the council had authorized the town manager to work with the chamber on that, and we intend to move ahead in the spirit of that resolution and look at trying to get this new space across the finish line. Chris and I will have to come up with the particulars on an agreement and what that looks like for that expenditure of money. But ultimately, we would really like to stand this up. What it does for local businesses is provide ongoing education opportunities, trainings to enhance their businesses, expand their businesses. And so that, in a nutshell, is where we're going with this. But I thought, since it had been some time since you all had heard that, and we'd been cooking it for a bit, now would be a good time to just update you on where we intend to go with it. So,
Did he leave any thunder at all for you?
I've left a lot.
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Ryan. I mean, most of this was, I came into the position, the money had been sitting in reserves, lifted a few rocks, got the backstory to everything, and realized a lot of the items that were still relevant that were left in the scope of work, we've actually accomplished through the Colorado Tourism Office and other grant opportunities. So it was really great. We got to leverage state money. And now we're looking to repurpose the funds that are already in our possession towards something that is much more modern. If you read through the 2014 resolution, I don't want to say it's laughable, but a lot has changed in 5 years in terms of the town, the council, manager, chamber, the economy, and where we're shifting and where you're seeing the state priorities shift as well is more towards this co-working space model and trying to support a remote workforce. We're hoping this space, in addition to really taking advantage of the programming that's already out there, particularly at a regional and state level, taking advantage of some of the governor's new programs. Governor Polis has a new initiative that focuses on remote workforce and flex time, where if an employee lives in a rural area and works there 3 days a week, so i.e. you are working for a front range employer, but you live here in Basalt, that company ultimately gets a tax incentive for employing that person in a rural area. So we're hoping to become a center where that's, people want to be, people who are already here, they're well educated, they have those opportunities, they engage with a front range company, but they get to stay here and their money gets to stay here in Basalt as well.
Okay, I have a question. Forgive me if it's already stated in here, but could you just give us kind of like bullet points of when each thing you hope to accomplish, the goal to get some of these other things going? Because I know I've talked to you enough to know it's fun. Do you have an idea yet of timeline?
We're looking to have the space up and running. I mean, frankly, if I could get it up next month, I will. I'm also realizing how long it takes to order office furniture. But to get the space fleshed out, we've been working with our partners with the Northwest Small Business Development Center, or SBDC. There's a lot of programming that Eagle County has funded that we haven't been able to take advantage of, mainly because we didn't have a physical place to put people. And so we've been working with Aaron at the SBDC with a commitment of, if we build it, you will come and do the programming and work with your consultants here and have face-to-face meeting with business owners, as opposed to maybe doing it over the phone and not building those resources here. We've also been talking with Carolyn about getting workforce development in here and their workshops available to our community as part of this process. So pretty much once the space is ready to go in a month or two, hopefully, we can hit the ground running with programming for this community.
Maybe we could have like a soft opening or something to just have us come over, because I know everyone hasn't wandered through there, but a number of people have, but that would be really great just to, anybody who could come from council, just
Definitely.
a quick tour, because it's, I don't know how it's gonna look different from when I've seen it.
Well, one thing is we are looking to work with Ryan on this and defining the scope, but updating the furniture to be the space and the technology that we need to make this space work. Another thing we've talked about that kind of dovetails well with the broadband conversation is we have a commitment from Cedar Networks that if we can get the wires to the building, we can be one of the fastest co-working spaces in all of Colorado. And that would be a great advantage. Montrose has an example, or just outside of Montrose, where their small business development center there and co-working space is actually a hub for the community to come to plug in. So I'm thinking up the frying pan. You're not going to get fiber up there. You're going to have to deal with satellite. You could come to our space and leverage that technology. And also the majority of our businesses are micro. They're 1 to 5 person businesses. You can't afford some of that technology, but we can share the cost as a single center.
Okay, and did you want to introduce
Yes.
this woman? Oh, up there?
Yep.
Well, I mean, we have a whole 10 minutes. We might
Yes.
as well use it.
Alrighty, well, I'm Carolyn Tucker. I'm with the Colorado Workforce Center based in Glenwood Springs. And so our role in business services is to work with chambers and other organizations to really focus on the business community. So we have one side of the house, which is focusing on job seekers. The other thing is increasing the vitality and the sustainability of businesses. And that is through additional resources that the state can bring, trainings, things of that nature. And the co-working space is absolutely ideal for working with the Small Business Development Center and their programming, workforce programming, and creating that hub for the small business. One of the things that Chris talked about was the governor's push for the remote worker. And that's something that Eagle County and you guys have an advantage over Garfield County in that you need to be a jumpstart county in order to qualify for that program. Garfield County does not. So the opportunity for remote workers is really strong up here, and it fits the demographic of what's happening across the state. So I think, I'm just here to really support Chris's programs and her idea. It's going to work really great for this end of the valley.
Well, thank you for driving up here in the dark.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
Chris, for all the work you've done on this. Does anybody have a quick question for Chris? Okay, thanks so much.
I do.
Yes, you do.
Question.
What does it take, or tell me about giving the cable to the building?
That's really, I've talked to both Chris and Gretchen at Cedar, and part of it is the easements, with one of the recent, I can't remember, it's
Senate
the,
Bill 107.
thank you, I'm like, it's SB something. That Carrie Donovan back, that actually is gonna help us significantly. Part of it, which we would love either the council or Ryan's help with, is a letter of support to get the wires there, because part of it requires Holy Cross working with us to get it wired, because they own the poles. So essentially, they're gonna put broadband over the telephone poles
Oh, so
to get to the
Building
building.
behind.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
It-
not an underground.
It's not underground, and actually, in talking to Chris, one of the head guys at Cedar Networks, it's actually not, like, it's better to be over the power lines in terms of fixing it, because every time if you had an issue, you'd have to dig up a sidewalk, and given the older infrastructure of downtown, that wouldn't exactly be ideal.
And so that run would be from, I recognize that the Skico building is,
We're wired on it right now, and so is the caboose. So it kind of stops in this triangle here, and so it would just be an extension of that kind of through the back end of all of Midland Avenue.
and who is the landlord, owner of the building?
Romero Group.
Okay.
And just to give context, Dwayne was executive director of the Office of Economic Development for 6 months. So that's why he's been a really good partner of ours in this. We do have a lease. We're actually negotiating it to extend it at this time. But we really think this is a great opportunity for the space. And we're also working with all of our sister communities, sister chambers, sister co-working spaces, so that we can extend all of this. So if you are an individual who happens to work in Basalt or live in Aspen or vice versa, that you have the ability to access the programming that we're going to do based on kid pickup and drop off and all of that. We want to be able to just reach the whole community.
Thank you very much again for coming in. And don't forget to get your Tres Leches cake. Just sitting out there in the hallway.
A full slab.
A full slab. Por favor. Thank you again. Thank you. Okay, first reading ordinance 28 of 2019, an ordinance of the town providing for supplemental appropriation of the year ending December 31, 2019, related to the Riverside BC HOA and repayment of the remainder of the affordable housing line of credit. Yay, Christie.
Yes, yay,
Yes and yay.
absolutely. This does mark a somewhat exciting, time, is looking at, repaying all of our line of credit with our affordable housing. Council did the vast majority of that with the sale of Shiny Mountain Way earlier in the year, and we have $239,000 outstanding, to repay, and this recommendation and, appropriation would, go ahead and do that for this year. And we would utilize the funding that you'll see in the projection that we have available to be able to do that. So we have cash flow. It's not going to impact what we originally thought our cash flow would be from the year over year. So we see it as a win-win. We've heard that from council throughout the year as a priority for sure. And then the other part of this is to, according to what our auditors had found, during the 2018 audit, is to recognize the Riverside BC units as what they're calling component units, to incorporate them into our financial statements to make sure that we're not going to be over budget on that. So, and I just used their estimated budget for what we put in ours.
What does this save us annually? What's this gonna save us?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. So it was around 1,500 to 2,000 a month. So you look at about 20 to 24,000.
All right, so
For the
Ryan, you
remainder.
can use that to decorate back there.
That's a chunk of change.
That seems like
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
1,600, yeah.
Okay, this is not a public hearing or anything, but we do have a motion, or if there's further questions.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 28, series of 2019 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for December 10th, 2019.
Second.
Tie goes to the runner, which I guess would be Jen. All in favor? Opposed? Great.
Can I say one thing?
Oh, sorry.
I just think it's important to call out that one of our goals for the year in doing this is met, and that we are, and Christy may have mentioned it when I stepped out, but reducing some debt that we had on the books that was short-term debt, that with a variable interest rate, that, you know, the town had acquired at a time when we needed it to finish both the underpass, which is you know, obviously a great project for us, and then for some acquisition of affordable housing. But this year, we reduced that debt, wiped it off the books, and that was $3 million. So we really concentrated on getting that out, and that was something that the council had put on our work plan for the year, and so, job
I
well done.
appreciate you saying that, and if we could try hard, I mean, we all are so inside baseball that we kind of go with this as it happens, but if you could bring that back
Yep.
in for public and for media to hear, every time we do something that is like a big goal that just, boom, done,
Yeah.
we need to, don't we have something that we could check off? I'm a big checklist person, all right.
We'll be getting our new 2020 work plan up there very soon.
Susan?
Yeah.
Don't make me laugh. Okay, all right. So where are we, Brian?
7B.
Thank you. First reading of ordinance 29. He's my caretaker over here on my left. Ordinance of the town appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes set forth below for the town of Basalt for the 2020 budget. It's the Christie show.
Well, yeah, but I mean, really, it's the everybody show. We had a lot of input on our budget, and this is just the culmination of all the work. You wouldn't think that this little document here would have taken all this time, but it has, and we're very excited about all of our accomplishments with this year's budget. Now, I'm going to start off from where we discussed the first draft budget. Because we talked about a lot of the things that we accomplished in the first draft budget, but we've added to that, and we've made some adjustments, and so I just want to make sure everybody was aware of those. The first one that we're going to talk about is looking at the full incorporation of strategic plan. And I'll let Ryan talk to that a little bit more in how that really improves our fiscal transparency and accountability and the responsibility we have to the public and what we're doing for the year. It's just really neat to have that at the front of our document. It really works well into the document to give it life, if you will, of what this all means to a layperson as far as what we're trying to accomplish with the money we're getting.
Yeah, so as you recall, you know, back in March, we developed a strategic plan, and that was adopted by the council, and that was after a series of meetings trying to prioritize where we want to go with the town and just make sure we have that roadmap. So this kind of takes it a step further, gets a little more granular in the sense that we're picking out specific tasks for 2020 that are reflective of that strategic plan or that strategic framework. And then it gets put into the budget document. And to my knowledge, this is sort of the first time that the town has done that. So it's really a big step for us in the sense that we've got that memorialized in the budget, and then, you know, ideally those budget dollars are tied back to those so that we concentrate on them throughout the year. And like I just talked about, the reduction of debt, we're able to kind of check off those boxes as we go. So with that was something that we all met, council and myself, to discuss, and I got that final direction from you all about 4 or 6 weeks ago, and so that is now in here, and so that's for me to now take once adopted and share it widely with our staff to make sure that kind of gets developed into our internal work plans that we have. So
Great.
Okay, awesome.
So awesome.
So awesome.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's the next step in accountability and just continuity, I think, too. It really memorializes all the work that the council and the town manager has done during the year, and it's something you could build off of, which is the exciting part into your future. So now you have a plan, and you get to look forward, and that's really a neat part.
And I will just throw in one more thing. I don't want to make this meeting go long because Auden will throw things at me. But, you know, setting out a way to go forward consistently, like with a real track laid down, is something that I haven't seen here. And I'm very proud of you and the other staff, and us, of course.
Yeah, we got a
Kinda-
good
kinda
momentum
us.
going for sure, so. So then, I'm just gonna kind of skip around a little bit, but if you look on, page 12, on the budget, that's our financial summary for the numbers people that just love numbers. It, first of all, starts to discuss all of, just one more page, yeah. I don't know if you can move it, yeah, flip it. But first of all, it calls out all the funds that we have at the town for all of our citizens to understand our funding structure. Our general fund and our restricted fund used to be one fund, named the general fund before. We've separated them out, as I'll mention again, because our restricted funds are used kind of in chunks, if you will. You note that on the bottom, change in fund balance, right at the bottom here, there's a $3 million use of fund balance here. That's because mostly Basalt River Park, some of the post-funding, and the timing of various projects that are restricted and when those happen. So that's something that we want separate from what our general fund operations are, because we want to know our general fund is operating not at a loss, but at a balanced budget. The only reason why you're going to see that negative $177,000 in there for this year is because of the timing of when we're going to receive 3 police vehicles that were budgeted for this year. I had to transition into the next year because of some problems with the factory. So things that we really can't plan ahead, but you'll see a favorable variance on our projection this year, and then it'll move into our budget for next year. So overall, it's no additional use in funds. Our bond fund is used for specifically for the repayment of our prior debt from our bonds, from the construction that was approved from our voters with Basalt River Park. Water fund is all of the, obviously our water fund and what we do for our water services for our community. And the conservation trust fund is for the lottery proceeds. It's required to be in a separate fund. Okay. So the most important part of that, though, is the change in fund balance. That tells you financially whether you're going up or down in a specific year, but there's always more of a story than this, so we'll delve into it more. Like, for example, the water fund looks like it's going $154,000 down in our fund balance. However, if you look at our 2019 projection, we're making some money this year that we're going to spend next year in capital. So we're always kind of a year in arrears on that, and making sure that we're being thoughtful on how we utilize that capital and bringing in the funding before it's spent. Okay. So then I'm going to go to pages 13 and 14. I'll go to page 13 first. The important part of this page is this is our general fund. This is our operations. This is how you tell how we're doing with our bread and butter services we provide as a town. And we've got a balanced budget, save the thing that I already explained on the 3 vehicles. But let's see here. And so that's really it. And the most important thing to talk about on this page too is looking at the expenditures by department, is specifically how we're spending our monies by department, which is also in a graph on pages 15 through 17. There's graphs that also depict those things as well. And thanks to Ryan for his thoughts on some of that were included in this budget draft. So we'll get to those graphs in just a minute. So if you go on page 14, once again, we've got all of our expenditures by department here too. And the reason why is that even though we have this, the restricted and unrestricted funding now in 2 different separate funds, they're still located in a department. So for example, the police department can still access those all in one spot in one department as a police force. So that you can see exactly what's restricted within police, for example, and what's unrestricted within police. It's the same for all of our departments, is how it's structured. Okay. So then the next pages 15 through 17 are our graphs. So you've got our general fund revenue by source, on our first graph. Obviously, sales tax, always 60%. Really, these graphs are really great for people that maybe aren't numbers people, but they want to see where we get most of our funding from. So it's really useful for anybody in understanding our financial information, especially in our general fund, which is the most important fund, I think, for the town. And then you can look at our restricted fund revenue by source on our next graph, which is vast majority of sales tax as well, which is our post. And then when you look at page 17, you have your general fund expenditures by department, which are all listed out, so it's for easy reading, you can see which is which, okay?
Christy, quick question.
Yes.
On page 16, restricted fund revenue by source, where are RETAs? Are they miscellaneous other or other taxes?
They are
Licenses
going
and
to be
permits.
under, let's see here, that's a good question, let me just double check.
Well, they wouldn't be taxes, so they would have to be miscellaneous
License.
other.
Their
I
fees?
wonder if it's license fees, so is it under license fees? Yeah, it's under license and permitting fees, that's where I was not sure, but yeah, that's
Okay.
where it would be, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, you bet. So if you look at page 18, and I'm not gonna go through page by page, there's just a couple additions on the front end of the document. So I know I've got about a 10-minute window for everybody's attention, so just bear with me. One of the things that Ryan and myself heard very loud and clear from the council was, and the community as well, is just more understanding is needed of all of our restricted funding sources and uses. And so what we've done in this year's budget for that transparency is that we have included a description of all of those restrictions by each one of the restrictions in the budget, so people can understand what they're seeing when they look at carryovers for a specific fund or whatever, and how much money is available and what it can be used for. We're hopeful that this will, again, add more transparency to the budget document and understandability, okay? So then I'm gonna just go, I'm not going through all of them, but you guys are more than happy to read it. It's really great nighttime reading, just really suspenseful, so if you ever want to.
She's talking to me.
That's right.
Finance person makes joke.
Har.
Make joke.
Yes, I'm gonna keep my day job here, but I'm keeping you guys engaged in the meanwhile in this budget, so. It's just like I'm pulling hard on this thing. So if you look on pages 24 and 25, that's gonna give, the beginning balances of all of our restricted funding. And this is the first time we've incorporated these estimates into our budget document, which is really big. So it's going to give you 2019 projections for each one of them, and then it's going to give you your 2020 budgeted estimated carryover if everything goes as we plan, which it never does, but at least we have a plan for it, and it should be fairly accurate that way. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, so the rest of the budget document, I'm not going to go through in detail, except for to say that we added BPAC information for our arts program under all the legislative, on the bottom of the legislative line, which is on page 31. So we have our total arts funding for the year that we added in. We added the green team funding the last time around. So now that we know our total green team funding, just so we have better understanding of how we're spending our money and where. And that was pretty much all of the changes to the budget. I updated the projections so they're more accurate based upon year-to-date numbers. But we're doing okay. So I know I went through that fairly fast, but I wanted to give you guys time for your questions as well.
Questions? Gary's your handle?
I guess it is. Well, overall, I do want to thank you because I've been watching the budget here for a really long time. And it's a lot, the only concern I have is that we've gone so transparent that it's harder to understand than it used to be. I'm trying to make it easy for people to look into our budget. And this is as transparent as you could possibly make it, but my only question was to find a way. I don't know how you do it, cause I can't figure it out in my other job,
Yeah.
how to make it a little more, but there's just a lot of numbers, and there's a lot of pages, and you just get, over time, a little bit overwhelmed with it. I mean, so this is not a critique in any way, this is I think we've gone from not having any to having so much, but I don't know, I just wanted to get your thoughts and then
Yeah.
council thoughts
Well,
on
can I just throw out there on that? I don't know if it's too pedestrian for your use, but the picture with the buckets
Yeah.
and all of that, do we have an updated one of those? Because quite honestly, one of those with like a front and back gives all the detail most people in the public would want to get from us, elected officials. If they want the down and dirty, they're gonna have to come talk to you anyway. So if we could get an updated something like that, because I think Gary's right, it's my ice cross. And so like for instance, I need something that I could sit down with somebody at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And kind of explain at a layperson's level, because that's what I am. And this I could not explain to anyone.
Well, I can explain it, it's just gonna take
I can't.
hours. I
Yeah.
mean, well, the cool thing is, sorry, but the greatest thing is if you really take the time to look, everything we do is in here, everything.
That's right.
And so it really
true.
is amazing to watch the transformation and the transparency. It's just that it's hard to explain it to somebody else. Like if I, wanted to really talk about the budget and like have them understand it, it's just something I'd love to figure out. We don't have to necessarily do it this year, but it's just something to think about, is trying to come out of this and go, here's the town's budget and here's how we can explain it in an easier way. I don't want to take away any of this, because
No.
for me at council, and the amount of times that we've gone through it, I get it, but we've been doing it for probably 4-5 hours,
So that,
having you explain it.
and that's a great transition, because I think that goes into, delves into exactly where we're headed already with our Finance Advisory Board. We almost have a full Finance Advisory Board now. They've started talking and educating the public and working with the buckets. Graph was a great graphical depiction. They're going to start working with our budget more. They've been evolving this year, so they really haven't done a lot with the budget, but that's going to be the next kind of generation, if you will, is the inclusion of that board and the community in the budget conversation and the way we communicate our budget, which I think will be a great step. So I think it's a very good point, germane point.
Can we go to
No,
Jen?
I have one more.
Okay.
Oh, wait, she wanted to, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the index in the front that tells you the page numbers of where everything's going to be. And then for me, just as an idea of when I'm flipping through it on my tablet, it'd be really helpful to have like a header or a footer that said what each section was. Because there's a big, you see what the strategic plan, and it does have a specific aesthetic to it, but once you get into the summary, or when we're looking at the reserve funds and with the restricted committed funds description, that header doesn't carry through, and so then it becomes a little like, am I still in the same thing? Did I flip too far?
Right.
Yeah.
Electronically making it that way, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, Gary?
So there was one thing I wanted to get council's kind of thoughts on, is that Ryan and I have been sitting on the Child Care Coalition for a while. I've been doing it a long time, but Ryan really has stepped up this year and has taken a lot of the onus of doing that once a month, and I really appreciate it. And one of the things that we didn't include in the budget, and I want to see if everyone's okay with potentially including it, is one of the things that really is necessary. It's like when we did the affordable housing thing, is doing a needs assessment and updating the needs assessment, because the needs assessment was done for childcare back in 2014, I think, and we need to update it, and because we're talking about the Willits 2E parcel, potentially putting childcare on that one. So we need to really get a better handle on what is the true need for childcare, because you can go talk to Adele at Growing Years, or Michelle at Blue Lake, or Sarah Mantha at Honey Tree, and they all have waiting lists. And yeah, but calculating that and really trying to come up with, here's the number that we're looking at, here's the issues that we're having, and last time, you know, really getting to the Latino community and figuring out that need. And so one of the things that I wanted to see is, in Eagle County is gonna start doing this also throughout all of Eagle County. And Eagle County's actually, gonna be working on potentially putting something on the ballot in 2020 for childcare. And so their needs assessment. So if there's a way that we could partner with them and get that needs assessment, it's an extra $10,000 to the childcare line item. And so I was just seeing if people would be supportive of it.
Well, I think it's great that it's gonna be a regional effort on this, study, because the counties have been pretty good, especially Eagle. What about Pitkin? Will they help us as well?
You know, we're gonna actually, at the last meeting, what we talked about doing was to do a child care coalition meeting with making sure Patty Clapper usually shows up for Pitkin, and get Jeannie, who's their representative, Jeannie McQueenie from, and then if Ryan and I can be there, and just I think Pitkin will be on board, and especially with, Kids First. I think they'll be on board with it, and expanding that piece of it, because also the city of Aspen's also looking at, what to do with their funding. Should it be moved to a Pitkin County-wide tax? So they're gonna be looking at that too. We might be able to finally get a city of Aspen council person to come to one of these meetings. Rachel Richards has seemed to be very interested in looking at potentially moving the Kids First to make it bigger, and not just the city of Aspen. So yes, it will be. Pitkin hasn't been approached yet for any funding for the needs analysis. The thing is, they do their own needs analysis, and so Eagle and Basalt would do it together for our area. I wish it could be more regional, like this housing thing, but we just don't. It's not as pertinent to, it seems, the Garfield area in Carbondale, and the need is great. So, but if we can really do it this area, and if Eagle County moves forward with potentially asking for a tax, that would be pretty amazing, turnaround for trying to get that. So
I assume you've talked to Brian Mahoney.
Susan, I think Sarah and Susan talked.
Just to pass that information on that you guys were gonna be asking.
Yeah, so that is today not reflected in the numbers in this budget, so that would be
For the second reading.
Right. Well, I guess I'll just say that I am not against this. My concern is always this late in the game, if all of us has a project, a pet project that we want funded now from somewhere, that's my only concern. And I'm not against this, but, Auden's probably got a green team thing, and Katie's got a climate thing, and so I just want to caution that we need to think about these things sooner up front. And I know that there's a way to shuffle money. So can we just have this conversation with staff in-house prior to second, and get your thoughts? Yeah.
And for consistency, just on board of having a formal paper request that states, just like we just did the discretionary grant, it's something that I brought up earlier with another funding request is, please provide council to consider to add to the budget a written formal request that outlines what the funds are going to be going to, who's going to be managing this, all of those details with other
Okay.
partners.
Does
what
that
you
sound good,
verbally did.
Yes,
Ryan?
I've got a note here.
All right. Where are we?
Any other questions?
I would love to see I appreciate everything you did on the graphs for 15, 17. I think that makes it very easy to read. I was wondering if we could get the same kind of graph on page, where is it, 29? That mirrors our sales tax revenue collected. Could we see that also with our expenditures, like an overlaying line?
Oh,
Maybe simplify it I think that would be kind of an answer to some of Gary's questions on, yes, our revenues are expanding and we're also spending, and how they mirror each other, and general breakdown of where everything's going, just so.
One question, in order to get a complete picture, if we limit it to sales tax only, I think that's maybe going to paint an inaccurate picture of those expenditures, because we don't tie our expenditures to only one bucket of money. They're tied to all of the buckets of unrestricted, for example.
Correct, but if you took like this, right? If you map this for the general fund revenue by source, the complete revenues,
Yeah.
not just the sales tax. So in that similar vein, but with broader numbers that are greater than just sales tax.
would you have like a total revenue number?
Yeah.
And then a total expense number, and you would just have it on a separate graph that would show like, the last 10 years of.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for the town to see. I know
Over time.
some people
Okay.
see stuff visually, and
For sure.
I know I've seen complaints in the paper about
So you're
also
talking about,
overspending.
so you are talking about a time,
Yeah,
over time type
yeah.
of thing.
I like that
Okay.
too, a trend.
Okay.
Sort of thing.
but this is awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
you're
for-
welcome. Yeah.
Jen, do you have something? You've got a look of a question.
Oh, actually, I'm doing my mouth physical therapy,
Okay.
because all of, many of us counselors, have,
Okay, so are we ready for a motion?
Mayor, I move town council approve ordinance number 29, series of 2019 on first reading, and set the public hearing and second reading for December 10th, 2019.
second.
Okay, let's say that was Katie this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great job, Christie.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Okay, resolution 43, a resolution of the town approving the expenditure of community enhancement funds from Holy Cross Energy. And that would be Susan?
Yes,
It says.
this comes out of the franchise agreement that the town has that we originally approved in 2008, and then last year we re-upped it for another round. And under our franchise agreement, we get a certain percentage of funds come to the town of Basalt that we can use for community enhancement. And by this resolution, we're allocating how we want to spend the funds in 2020. And these are the numbers that are reflected in the budget that you just looked at. So it includes $40,000 for events, and $10,000 for the Habitat for Humanity, for a commitment that the Green Team made for Habitat to Humanity to convert to net zero energy. So that's what the resolution does.
Questions, comments, Auden?
Comment, thanks, Holy Cross.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Holy Cross. Anybody else? Motions, questions?
Mayor, I move that town council adopt resolution number 43, series of 2019 as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Everybody? Susan? So, first reading of ordinance 30, an ordinance of the town amending the town's local amendments to the town traffic code, Title 8, Vehicles and Traffic of the Basalt Town Code for the regulation of parking within the town of Basalt. Jeff and Chief Knott.
Great, I'll handle this one. This is proposed ordinance stemmed out of conversations in the municipal court related to enforcement of parking tickets. The town's adopted the model traffic code, the Colorado Model Traffic Code, which contains definitions of owner and operator. And for the purpose of enforcing parking restrictions, the proposed amendment would amend the definition of owner to include the registered owner of a vehicle. And it makes it easier in enforcing parking tickets within the town because it will create a presumption of liability based on that amended definition of owner. And so this would just amend the definition of the owner within the town code as it relates to parking violations under the model traffic code and the town's other code provisions related to parking.
Okay. Anything else? Chief, do you have anything? No questions, motions?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 30 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for December 10th, 2019.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Wow. Is that it?
Impressive.
That was great. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, again, council, all the staff.
You all.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, go enjoy it.
You look marvelous. You actually shaved, Ryan.
Well, Chief not